we actually have a guest today. It's our colleague, actually, Jamie and I, colleague. We work at Microsoft. So he's one of our Microsoft colleague, and he's a senior agentic AI strategist and architect at Microsoft. He works directly with Fortune 500 executives and engineering leaders to design and deploy production-grade AI systems at scale. He has done tons of work. He is also a great teacher because he uses, the newsletter. He uses his LinkedIn post daily to post about what's happening and how the agentic architecture, etc. A lot of themes that he covers. He has a wide following. He's also an author. He has written a book on the AI systems, how to architect an AI system, as well as he's also a LinkedIn learning course instructor. So a lots of things, and we're going to welcome Anurag here to talk about a few topics today.
Hey,
Hello, Anurag.
hey, Shadab, Jamie. Thanks for having me. Pleasure being here. I've heard your podcast so many times, and it's an honor for me hanging out with you here today and sharing my insights. And thanks for that warm introduction. Now I'm like a little under pressure now.
Well, welcome to have you to the podcast, and we pulled out all the stops, including the sound drum roll for you. So no expense too big for us.
And there's a red carpet too, which nobody else can see. Okay, great.
It's really a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And Anurag, it's a pleasure to have you here. First of all, appreciate the time. Jamie and I, we are very thankful for your appearance here. And we just gave a very quick, brief intro about you, but nothing that does the justice. So we really want to get started from your side, your story, who you are, what you do, what you have done so far, number of accomplishments that you have, particularly as somebody who actually helps people learn about AI and agents.
Awesome. Yeah. So to start with, I'm an enterprise AI apps architect, senior AI apps architect at Microsoft, helping Fortune 500, like you said, on building production grade agentic AI solution, enterprise grade production grade. Because I see a lot of gap there today. So really excited to talk about some of the challenges we are seeing and how we could help the customers there, right? So a little about my journey. I'm very passionate about technology, engineering, and teaching about this to the society. I started my journey in computer engineering in Mumbai. I moved to US, did in my information management in data science masters in Syracuse, and then got a job at PwC EY. That's where I got bulk of the experiences around building cloud solutions. I managed the offshore teams on like large cloud transformation projects. I was also part of an AI incubator at PwC where I got good hands-on learning on like AI solutions, building AI solutions. Then the best thing that happened to me was getting a job at Microsoft, and this happened just before the Gen AI boom in 2022, and I was at the right place at the right time. After that, it's just been an incredible journey for me. Like I've been part of like 50 plus enterprise AI deployments. First, it was more on basic Gen AI, RAG. Now it's getting more agentic AI. So having been part of this journey, I've learned a lot, and I like to, and that's what I'm like continuing to share with the community through LinkedIn, Substack, and through my book. And that gives me deep purpose and fulfillment, and that's why I do it. Like it's just very fulfilling when someone sees my content online and tells me that it has helped them in their work or anywhere on their journey on getting a job. That's very deeply fulfilling for me. So that's why I do that. And yes, I think it's being at Microsoft, working with like stellar colleagues like you both. It's and many more. It's so much fun, and it's just every day is a new learning in the space, and that's what keeps me going. Like every morning, it's excited for another day at Microsoft.
So you've obviously been in what I'll call a front row seat, working with these enterprises, adopting AI. You've probably seen a lot of success, and you've probably seen some failures as well. So as an architect, what would you say are like the top pitfalls that you see organizations making today when they design and then ultimately deploy AI agents?
Yeah, so 3 things come to mind for me here. One is having no evaluation framework and no red teaming strategy. Okay, evaluation framework is so important. Like when you're building solutions, unless you can't, if you're not able to measure the progress of a solution, you don't really know if you're building a good solution or not. Like for example, like a simple evaluation measure like groundedness. Like these agentic AI solutions are powered by Gen AI models that hallucinate, right? So you need something to understand if your agent is hallucinating or not, and how well it's doing against the enterprise data that you have, like how accurately it's answering. So having some kind of an evaluation measure to understand the accuracy, relevancy of the answers your agents are producing, I don't really see that happening. That's one. And then the second one is around red teaming strategy. So red teaming is basically proactively securing your agents against modern attacks. Okay. Uh, this is a new thing, and like given like these new cyber models that are coming out, right? Like Mythos is one of them. It's not out yet, but it may soon be out. And like these are so good at like benchmarks like Cyberbench. They've gotten so good at generating code that now they've reached a point that they can understand vulnerabilities in software. So this is going to get more and more prevalent. There was recently, a few days back, there was an attack on the Warsaw system as well. So having a robust red teaming strategy to proactively secure agents and making them more resilient, I don't see that happening a lot today, and it's going to be more and more important now as these models get better at on like cyber attacks. Now, the second thing I would say is treating agentic AI systems more as like deterministic. That is another pitfall. Like you can add determinism into them, but they are inherently non-deterministic in nature. They're powered again by Gen AI models that are non-deterministic. So I think enterprises need to have guardrails around how do you add determinism in your solutions and not treat it as traditional software. Okay. So one example is if you have like tools that your agents are calling tools, having some custom built function into them, embedding custom built function like clear logic designed that calculates something like a sales metric or something like that. Having embed that into tools is like there are different ways to add determinism. Like I don't want to go deep into that now, but thinking about that is crucial because these are inherently non-deterministic. Uh, Third thing is I would say is over indexing on models and under indexing on context engineering. Okay. Now, when I say that, what that means is I see a lot of customers spending a lot of time trying to understand the best model out there for their solution. I think that's important. But I feel like models, the intelligence in these models are commoditizing now. Okay. They're reaching a point where everyone can use the best models. But if you want to have a competitive edge in the industry, you need to work on your context engineering because that is unique to your organization. That will give you a strategic advantage. So context engineering basically having what goes in the context is basically instructions, data, tools, right? So having like high quality data in the organization, understanding what instructions you need to put for your agents and like what tools they can access to MCP. So it's going to affect how they make decisions. Okay, your organization's decision quality will be determined by how well you engineer the context of the models.
So I want to make sure that people, you and I and Shadab know what context engineering is, but I want to make sure our audience is all at the same context, no pun intended. So, I mean, you obviously just mentioned context engineering, but in the context of context engineering, it's more than just like, hey, I'm going to use the next best model. It's about the control. And that actually starts with context engineering. So can you explain, like, number one, what context engineering is, and ultimately, why does that matter to organizations, or for that point, the people that are listening to this podcast right now?
So context engineering, the fundamental components of context engineering are instructions, data, and tools. Okay. So instructions set the tone and style of your agents. If it's a customer facing agent, you want it to be more empathetic, right? So something it also sets rules on how these agents must behave. That's number one. Second is data. So data is basically your enterprise knowledge. Okay, it could be the memory store. You're building a memory of your customers, right? Like their personal facts and stuff like that, to give them more personalized recommendations. So enterprise knowledge and memory fall under data. Now, enterprise knowledge could be your data sitting in like Fabric One Lake or any other analytic database or a SQL database. So that's the reason it's so important today to have a strong data foundation, right? A messy data can lead to messy decisions. Okay. Garbage in, garbage out. So data is the second key pillar of context. Third key pillar is tools. Okay, tools is how these agents access data and take actions. Okay, now MCP servers are part of this as well. If your agent is accessing an MCP server, so MCP is basically, it's a standardized way that it provides access to tools to an agent. Okay, at runtime, your agent will call this MCP server and pick the right tools for the task at hand. So these are the three components. So if you don't have good instructions, your agents will misbehave. If you don't have good data, your agents will not be able to take the right decision, give accurate answers. The three is, if you don't have good tools, your agents will start taking wrong actions. So it's so important to have these three things in your context, and that is exactly context engineering, and that's going to soon become the strategic advantage of organizations.
So, Anurag, one question. It's I would say it's important to know that context engineering is so invaluable to make the agentic, the architecture a success. However, how do you measure? Like, is there a skill that people can know that, okay, yes, they are good on the context engineering? How do people know? Is there a checklist, like, they know that, okay, they have done enough?
So yeah, so evaluation framework is one I had said earlier, right? Like, so evaluating your agents on the outputs and comparing to your ground truth data. So if you see Microsoft Foundry tool, there are like 20 plus metrics on how an agent is performing. So one of them is tool calling accuracy. Okay, how well an agent is calling different tools at runtime, right? So these are, and there are a lot more, like also around like harmfulness, violence, like if they are actually spitting out violent information. So having that kind of evaluation framework early on, designing that based on your task at hand, is so critical to understand if your context is performing well in your agents.
Got it. So it's kind of a composite, basically an assessment that you have to do on your context engineering.
Absolutely, yeah. And having that, when I say evaluation, there are two types of evaluation: online and offline evaluations. Offline evaluations is you do before pre-prod. You test it against your test data set, a golden truth data set. This is provided by subject matter experts to make sure it's aligned to the golden data sets, right? And then you have online evaluation. What that means is, once these agents go into production, you have to continuously monitor them for like drift, if they are performing accurately and with high relevance to your questions, and also tool call accuracy, and yeah, things like that. So I highly recommend checking out like all those like 20 plus evaluation metrics that are there on Foundry, which can give you a head start on this.
Okay. And when you talk about control, you have framed it around three things. It seems like the instructions, the data, and the tools the model can use. Can you just unpack those for our audience in the practical terms? What does it mean, and where they can make sure that they're using it in the platform, and what are the things that they need to take care?
So controls. When I talk about controls, it's mostly around like making your context robust against like prompt injection attacks, right? Like so let me talk about, so when you're building like build time, like when you're building agents with your software development stack, okay, you need to have certain kind of controls in your build agents. Okay, when I talk about build agents, is basically these are like, could be like security reviewer agent, a code quality reviewer agent. Okay, now these agents, like if you've heard of GitHub Copilot, they are so good at generating code, and they're also good at reviewing code now. Okay, so that is where the code review process has to be an important part of your control process. Okay, so so yeah, so that is when I say controls, it's having those controls in your build stack, your build agents, so that you build strong runtime agents that are deployed in your runtime environment. So did you get that? I'm happy to go deeper into that if you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe a follow up on that. So um, again, part of our audience is technical and they understand GitHub Copilot and the things that are in there, and part of our audience may not. Inside of those tools, there's things like markdown files that you create for skills or defining specialized agents, things that you're developing. I guess maybe a question on those engineering standards are, how do you enforce those standards in an organization on how things are actually being built? And part of this is, and for my own practices and the things that I've done, I don't want to say it's sort of like the Wild Wild West, but I just create stuff. And in some cases, not that I don't look at the code, right? But I'm relying heavily on things like the Copilot or Codex or Anthropic Claude Code or whatever the tool you're using to create these things. But a lot of times, how do I know what I'm creating is actually within the lines of what the organization wants or needs? You mentioned some things on like having agents to check over work, which I think is super important, especially as people get less, I'm going to call it less reliant, or maybe you might want to call it lazy on checking code, right? So there's got to be things that enforce it. So I guess my question back to you is, how should engineering leaders, executives think about those individual building blocks on how they should enforce standards, especially as we're looking towards a workforce that is, they're not developers anymore, at least not the way I think of things. They're actually developer managers,
Right.
on developing things. So what's your thoughts on that? What have you done? What have you seen? And what worked?
So 2025 was the year of vibe coding, right? Like, and I built prototypes for customers to show the power of Azure. I was able to build like 4 or 5 prototypes in a week, but a year back I could build only 1 in 2 weeks. So clearly these coding models became so powerful, and you're able to spin up like prototypes immediately in like few hours. Now the thing with these now moving to 2026, this is where organizations trying to understand how we could use these code generation tools, standardize the processes, right? Because if you are building for the enterprise or software for the enterprise, you have a team of developers. They'll have their own prompting style. They'll probably use their own framework. So that's where that leads to inconsistency. And this is what I'm seeing. This is like the number one challenge for all the software managers today, is trying to understand how to bring consistency and standardization in the processes. And also the code velocity is going up, right? Like with these models getting so better, like so good, like Opus 4.6, the code velocity is also going up. So the bottleneck has become the review of this code process. Okay, code develop, the code that has been developed. So the question is, how do we bring consistency and standardization, and how do we automate the code review process in the best possible way? So I want to like share my screen to show you some of the primitives in GitHub Copilot, and it's very similar to like if you've used Claude Code, if you've used some of the markdown files, right? The skill.md, agent.md. It's very similar to that, and GitHub Copilot provides these primitives that you could use today. Let me share my screen and show you this.
Yeah, I think this is such a pertinent topic. Just today, Sundar Pichai, actually, while opening the Google Cloud Next platform, he mentioned that now their engineers are actually using these coding tools. 75% of the work is being done by the coding tools, and then the engineers review it, of course. And it is already up from 50% in the last fall. So just 6 months, look at the 25% more work is being done by mostly the coding tools. It's just tremendous. There's so much being done now with the coding tools.
Absolutely, yeah. Agentic coding velocity is going up, and yeah, the challenge, like it's standardization and consistency across your team of developers. That's going to be the number one challenge, the theme for this year for the managers to understand. Totally agreed, Shadab. So this is what we have today, right? On GitHub Copilot. So I'll quickly touch upon the important ones. And this is how you add determinism as well to your code generation process. Given these models are non-deterministic in nature, bringing standardization consistency could be a challenge. But these markdown files provide you the capabilities to bring that kind of standardization consistency. So for example, one of them is the skill.md. Okay, skill.md, these are basically like how to guides on like on demand. This gets loaded by agents when you ask them to perform a task, and there are a set of instructions, repeatable instructions. So for example, you could have an how to guide for a to create to automate a ppt. Okay, so skill.md. And if you see online, you'll see so many skill libraries emerging. Some of them are really cool, like they can really automate your process. Okay, then you have something like specialized agents over here. Like you could have something like security reviewer, test writer, docs generator. This is where you add those guardrails, the controls. When you're building your agents, you add granular instructions that are actually applicable for your organization. So when I say security reviewer, you need some kind, if you need like a VNet isolation or things like that, and like making sure you don't push uh, like passwords to your GitHub repo, right? So you need to have certain kind of guardrails, and this is where you add those controls. Shadab, you said, right? It's like security reviewer. So these are some of the markdown files, and then hooks is these are event-driven triggers that act before an agent takes an action, and after an agent takes an action. You could add like some determinism, like some action, some triggers you could add to like deterministic to add determinism. And then Copilot instructions is at the repo level. So these are basically onboarding kind of documents. So it like you may have certain types of coding conventions that you want to adhere to. You want your team of developers to adhere to certain kinds of maybe frameworks they need to adhere to. Like for example, they should be using Microsoft Agent Framework to build an agentic workflow. So those.
So let me ask you a question. So is this how an organization or company should think about consistency across? I'm going to call it their humans, their developers, and the agents. Does it boil down to having what I'm going to call like a good set or a library of these skills that align with standards and security, or do they need something else in addition to that? Because I'm assuming it's not just, hey, let me have a great book of skills. There's more to it than that, right?
So yeah, this gives them a strong foundation scaffolding, which helps. This part of the build agents, right, gives them a strong scaffolding to build that developer agent, the coding agents. The second type of agents are like runtime agents. So if you have a strong scaffolding, you can build runtime agents that run in your container environments or your web apps. These are mainly customer-facing agents. Okay. For this, the audience is developers. For this, the audience is it's your customers. It could be a call center chatbot, a call center agent. Now, when you have this scaffolding right, you can automate this process of building agents in a standardized, consistent way. And you need to have the other guardrails is like around like observability, evals, red teaming that I spoke about. This is what falls on in your runtime agents. The risk profile for these two are very different. For example, for this one, the risk is internal. Okay, the risk tolerance is higher because your developers are the audience here. But here, for the runtime agents, your audience is customers. Okay, so you need to have strong guardrails around like observability and making sure tracking every action that your agent takes is recorded. So if something goes wrong, you can debug the agents, and these thread memory context, and these are all some of the things that give them that enterprise knowledge to take the right actions. As you see, MCPs or your MCP middleware tool skills, and then the Bing grounding is where it gives access to real-time knowledge from the internet, the web browsing. It can access the web.
So, one question, you have, Anurag, created this distinction, and I really love this illustration because it shows the distinction between the build time and the runtime agents, right? Why is this architectural shift so important for the organizations to understand? And do they really understand today? Do you see this pattern being followed by the enterprises?
So it's emerging, right? Like it's very important to understand the distinction between these two types of agent, because as I said, the risk profiles are very different for these two. Uh, for runtime agents that run on your like your consumer facing apps, it's directly dealing with the customers. So having strong guardrails over here, observability, governance around like what actions these agents, how they are behaving with the customers is super crucial, and what knowledge they have access to. Uh, but this build time agents, if you don't have the scaffolding right, you don't have the right security rules. Like this is policy as code over here. Okay, you're driving spec based development and having all the guidelines you need from uh, security test writing standpoint, docs generation standpoint. That all falls here. Okay, and you need to have the scaffolding right in order to build these agents, because the risk profile is very different. So have your base foundation right with GitHub Copilot with these markdown files, and then uh, and make that will ultimately help you build like production grade, enterprise grade agents with this runtime agents that I'm talking about. So does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. I think this is very important distinction that you talked about. Very important lesson for the enterprise builders.
Yeah, and I would add on to that, like security is super important. It's one thing that we talk about how companies should make a distinction between like these build time and runtime agents, but it's also about security. So are there other things that organizations should think about as they basically proactively secure their agents using Microsoft tools? Obviously, there's a whole bunch of things out there outside of Microsoft, but what do companies need to think about? And more importantly, as these models become more capable, you mentioned Mythos. We did an episode, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago on Mythos. What should companies think about, not only in terms of securing, but do they have what they need to do to protect, if you will, for these more capable models or more autonomous models in the future as it pertains to security?
Yeah, I would say like start looking into prompt injection, how you could secure against prompt injections. So prompt injection is basically it's an attack where an attacker puts malicious instructions in a prompt so as to bypass the safeguards of the model and get unauthorized access to the underlying systems, right? Like that may have sensitive data. So protecting your agents against prompt injections is highly important, and uh, proactively simulating attacks, modern attacks on them. Uh, it's super crucial, given like these cyber models like are coming out and they're going to get really good at finding vulnerabilities in your software. Uh, the world runs on software, healthcare, banks, uh, and like it's so critical now, like more than ever, to safeguard these systems, and safeguard against especially prompt injection attacks. And if you want to get started on like this simulating attacks on your agents proactively and trying to make them more resilient, Foundry has those capabilities as well today. You could definitely take a look. Like our responsible AI team, like is continuously researching about these modern types of attacks, and like like having them as a service on Foundry, and you could use them through your SDKs or like through the UI to simulate those attacks on your agents.
Cool. So let's talk about this. The security. I think one of the important part is also the observability, evals, and the red teaming as part of this, right? So, how important are those things? The observability, evals, and red teaming. And you've talked about some of these things already a little bit, but how integral are those? Are these optionals? Or how intensely they need to be considered? Because many times in the rush, sometimes people might be just skipping it. But as you also said, in the age of mythos, it could be fatal mistake.
Yep. I mean, they are. I think they're mandatory now. If you're especially building runtime agents, agents can now take actions, right? They can access your database with sensitive information. You need to keep track of what these agents are accessing and how they're acting upon. So having those kind of traces is super crucial. If something goes wrong, you want to debug the system, you have that trace available. So observability becomes super crucial, even more crucial now with Mythos. And observability and red teaming, as I said earlier. Red teaming is something which is very it's not part of the initial design strategy that I'm seeing these days. Like it has to be something that needs to be considered from the get go, because these models like Mythos for Opus 4.7 are so good in this benchmarks called a cyber bench and finding vulnerabilities in software. So they will, as these become more mainstream, they will find vulnerabilities in your agents. So it's if you want to, so it's so important to like proactively secure your agents against those type of attacks, and simulate modern attacks on them, and make them resilient before it goes to production. So I think it's mandatory now at this point. Like it's so crucial to have these guardrails in place before you actually move these agents to production. And evaluations are so. And you said the third thing was evaluations, right? That you were
Yes, observability, evals, and red teaming.
Evaluations are also super critical. Like unless you measure the progress of your system, unless you have something to measure the progress of your system, you really don't know if you're building a successful system or not. For example, like you have like something like these agents hallucinate. So having a measure around like groundedness, how well they're grounded against enterprise data, and then making sure you're making progress against that accuracy relevance is also super critical.
Awesome.
So one of the things, I guess it probably flows along the lines of observability and evals, but SWE automation, is that something that you see a lot being asked? I see it being brought up in the context of overall evaluation, but what's the pulse as you work with organizations around just the SWE automation?
So yeah, it's definitely a newer topic. It's emerging. I mean, vibe coding was all the craze last year. Now it's all about software engineering automation. How do you automate software at scale with a team of developers, right? So I'm seeing that more and more now, like with GitHub Copilot and Claude Code also be getting so good at it for enterprise. It just, the challenge is, the only thing is, how do you bring standardization, consistency, and how do you address that bottleneck of code review process, because the velocity of code generation is going up. So yes, it's a newer topic, and like definitely it's something on top of mind for a lot of software engineering leaders. And some of the primitives that I just spoke about, those markdown files, can really help you achieve that.
Mm-hmm. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about you. Can you tell us about your book, The Generative AI for Cloud Solutions? Like, what inspired you to write it? Other than, hey, let me go be an author. What did you learn about that journey, and what did it teach you as you went through that process?
Yeah, it was definitely an immensely rewarding process. So my co-author Paul Singh, he asked me to write this book. Opportunity just landed on my lap. I grabbed it. I always like sharing information with my audience and with the community. So this was a great medium for me. And in 2023, when Gen AI hit, like things were moving so fast, and even we wanted to make sense of what's happening. While writing the book, the research phase was super rewarding. It gave us so much clarity on what's happening when we were synthesizing all that information into the book. And yeah, like the book did quite well, actually. We were able to sell like more than 1,500 globally, like 1,500, 2,000 books globally. And it's still on Amazon, selling and highly reviewed. So yeah, I would say like I would, Jamie and Shadab, like with the knowledge you have, like I encourage you to like write a book, as like it's a very immensely rewarding process. Yeah, very grateful for that journey I went through.
I've already started my agents to actually start building my books and review it. Just got to give it the ideas and let it start writing.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I would say that it's first of all, it's an amazing achievement to actually write a book. Because it's it takes so much patience. I think it's a process. Long time ago, I started a process and I could never finish because it requires a lot of discipline, etc. And I would also say that for example, here on the screen, I'm actually showing the QR code that takes everybody to the link to the Amazon where Anurag book is available. It's generative AI for cloud solutions. The book that Anurag and Paul Singh has. Paul Singh is another of our Microsoft colleague. They have together written a book, so anybody can scan this QR code and go to that link if they want to purchase that. With that, actually, book is just one thing. You have actually done some other wonderful things as well. For example, you have actually started a newsletter and launched a LinkedIn learning course. And you have grown that newsletter in a very short period of time to over 3,000 subscribers. You launched this LinkedIn learning course, which is also available on LinkedIn. Anybody can actually use this training course to learn about the AI. First of all, applause for that. Okay. And it's a congratulations on these achievements. But tell us about that. How does the effective learning in this new era of AI look like now? And what is your own discipline of staying sharp and continuing to share?
Yeah, it's definitely this. It's technology is evolving so fast, uh, and I mean it's I'm consuming so much content every day, because of this technology at a rapid pace. It's moving, so I'm trying to get more clarity through synthesis, right? Consumption is one thing, but synthesis where I get clarity, and synthesis when I say like through these different channels like LinkedIn, my Substack, Diary of AI Architect, LinkedIn Learning. When I actually put that on paper, when I record a video, that's when I'm getting like mental clarity on how do you make sense of this from like first principles standpoint, and that helps me stay sharp. I would say like get more uh, understand where things are headed and make more sense of it. So yeah, and thanks Shara for mentioning my Substack newsletter. Like that's where I write about like production grade agentic AI solutions for enterprises. Yeah, it's growing well. Like it's close to 3,000 subscribers. Like yeah, glad it's resonating with everyone.
And I encourage the audience to actually also connect with Anurag on the LinkedIn, follow him because he actually regularly publishes. Yeah, almost 30,000 followers. You regularly publish pretty much every day. And I love those posts because those are capsule learning, right? I mean, short post and tells you every day something about the agent architecture and AI.
So that's awesome. I guess maybe one last question for you. You mentioned, your book, you've got the article in terms of, the LinkedIn learning pieces. How do people stay ahead of, the technology that seems to be changing almost every day? What advice would you give to somebody, especially new students coming out of college?
Yeah.
Shadab and I talked. I have a son who's graduating college literally in 2 weeks in an IT career field. So, like, what would you give them either early in career, late in career, advice as far as how do they future-proof themselves?
Yep. So yeah, definitely. I mean, difficult times for the new hires, but I think they can take this as an opportunity. Uh, what I would say is the skill that would be most valuable would be becoming a high agency operator. Okay, you understanding how you could use these different agents and come to a successful outcome in any field, finance, medical, or anything. Your subject area expertise. How do you use? How do you work with all these agents and come to a successful outcome? Just trying to get good at that will be a very valuable skill in the next few years. Like I'm like watching YouTube videos where people have these Mac minis and they are like running businesses with agents. Okay, so and this is a great time to be an entrepreneur as well if you have that mindset to learn how to use these agents and build a business. I think that is one more place new like grads can think about. And my field, especially like if you're thinking of doing like AI architecture or AI engineering, what I would say is getting a strong grasp of systems knowledge is super critical. Understanding when to use like maybe one database over another, like understanding the trade-offs, right? Like that, like the systems knowledge of IT. That's I think that's still super critical. And understanding how do you use AI assisted coding. You don't really need to learn how to code end to end. Like having the fundamental grasp and how do you use the AI assisted coding to build different solutions, build in public, like have your GitHub repo, showcase it to public. And I think these are some of the things you could be doing. And unless you build, you wouldn't really have strong intuitions about the space, I think, and your decision making would be much better only when you build things, I think. So these are some of the few advice I have, like for new grads.
That's great advice, and I definitely agree with you. I was listening to another podcast on my way over to the airport, and it's about just trying these things out and getting immersed into it, and create repositories. These are learning skills that you could share, but you also build your own knowledge as you go and build it. So
absolutely, yeah, you get so much clarity when you build and when you actually do hands-on work, like about all these space. So I highly encourage everyone, everyone to do that.
Agreed. Well,
Perfect.
I was going to say, thanks again for joining us today. Hopefully, I know I got a few things out of this, and I'm sure our audience did as well. But thanks for spending 45 minutes today.
Thanks for having me. I've listened to your podcast, as I said earlier. It's a pleasure being here. It's such an honor for me to hang out with you guys today and share my insights. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Thank you, Anurag. Thanks, Jimmy. Bye, everyone.
See ya.